Hi everyone, afternoon. So this is take two of our conversation with one of our suppliers, UPW. So we hope to be able to welcome on board Kuan Yu from the marketing manager from UPW. I can see her request. That's great. Let's hope it works for those of you that were trying. Fingers crossed. We're going to get a connection this time. Oh, so great to see so many of you. Thank you for joining us. Hey,
Yay!
Kuan!
It worked.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would be clapping right now if I wasn't holding my phone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our
Thank you so
Instagram
much.
live.
Yeah, it's
So
a pleasure to join.
wonderful to have you. So, for those of you that maybe weren't joining us on round two, I'm Amanda, the curator from the Sustainable Angle, and this is Kuan Liu, the marketing manager at UPW. So UPW are based in Dongguan in China, and they process and spin all their yarns on site and make beautiful luxury yarns. So they're a socially responsible company with a commitment to environmental protection and sustainable practices throughout the production process. They work with a really broad range of all different fiber categories, including amazing, beautiful luxury animal fibers, organic cotton, even hemp, silk, some of them featuring closed loop lyocell processed cellulosics such as tencel, and also lots of recycled fibers. So, welcome. First of all, I would really love to focus initially on your initiatives with animal fibers, because I think that's one of the sort of areas that not very many people really understand what it takes to produce a truly sustainable material from animal fibers, and what initiatives are UPW currently actually involved with that assure those best practices that I was just talking about.
Yeah, that was a great introduction of UPW and our services. Appreciate that. And yeah, so starting with animal fibers, we offer RWS certified wool as well as GCS certified cashmere. So GCS is just their very first round this year of doing the certification. We were really glad to be part of that. But I think probably the place to start is with RWS. So that's the Responsible Wool Standard for those of you who are not familiar with it. I think the reason why we start there is because it was one of the first certifications that really came up with the framework of how to think about animal welfare. And contrary to the name animal welfare, it actually encompasses a lot more than that. Also environmental protection, biodiversity management, and of course, supporting the local herders and the social impact. And from there, I think a lot of the new initiatives that we're seeing pop up, including SFA, that's the Sustainable Fiber Alliance. They're also working in cashmere, has borrowed from their definition of the five freedoms. And RWS recently came up with an update, and it broadens the definition from five freedoms to the five provisions and takes a lot more of a holistic approach. So just to give the audience kind of some background if they're not
Uh-huh.
familiar with it, we are right now speaking with SFA. They have already certified their farms and provided on the ground training for farms in Mongolia, and they have quite an interesting approach that is unique than other certifications, and that's they train the farmers, and so you have the farm gate that is focused on animal welfare, and then once the fibers is collected, it goes to the next step, which is scouring and processing to make sure the dirts and impurities are taken out, and they are also certifying that level. So that's the clean fiber processing code of practice. And so you have a very seamless, nice story of certified fibers. It's clean and processed in a sustainable manner. And then everyone along the supply chain, including UPW, would have the chain of custody to pass that along. And yeah, I think it's worth highlighting. It's not on the market right now. It's something they're working on, and should be in the market next July, around that time.
I mean, it is so interesting actually because it's, you know, with a focus upon knowing where our materials come from being ever more urgent. I think that
Yeah,
not very many
absolutely.
people really understand the issues. For example, you mentioned working very specifically with programs with herders and how
Hmm.
that's so important insofar as respecting the environment, because of course we've heard of, you know, horrendous issues with trying to intensively farm cashmere and the effect that that
Hmm.
has upon the environment. Could you just explain a little bit about that and how Sustainable Fiber Alliance means that you can actually begin to reverse these practices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for SFA, and each market is different. They focus on Mongolia and Inner Mongolia. So the farming practices are actually quite different there. Mongolia is more nomadic, and then Inner Mongolia is more farming style. And so you have to adapt to both of the contexts. And what they do is they work with people on the ground. And for China, they work with an organization called ICCAW. It's a government-backed organization. They do a lot of great work in not just cashmere, but actually pigs, chickens, livestock. It's yeah, they have the network and the framework of how they think about it in terms of fashion, but also agriculture and of course the food industry. So they work with that group and they together set out the trainings. And because they are located more remotely, they will go and work with one community, usually identifying a specific area or cooperative, and then kind of do the trainings back to back over several days. So I think it's quite realistic and a business model that can scale. And so that it's with SFA's guidance and also with ISIL, they've been consulting with them and then partnership with people who are on the ground and understand that context and have the access.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, it's very complex, and actually we take it for
Absolutely.
granted very much. You know, when you see beautiful materials in front of us, don't really think about the whole process that you have to go through in order to harvest that material and what impacts that can have both upon communities and the environment. And I know that you've been working also with the Textile Exchange program. You mentioned the RWS. Obviously, this is all of these initiatives have kind of been rooted in, you know, them drawing together organizations and how powerful that can be. And I know you've been a member of the Sustainable Fiber Alliance since 2019. So can you explain sort of how their initiatives work in drawing together all of the players in the fiber supply chain?
Yeah, sure. They so again, it starts with the certification on the farm level, and then doing the training, bringing in auditors, and then the chain of custody, which is they have it's called TCs. They're transaction certificates, and so it's just an extra level of verification and documentation that what we purchase of sustainable fiber that's coming in is also the same amount that is going out. I think what makes an initiative like Textile Exchange quite interesting, which is why we're gathering today for the conference, is that they host roundtable discussions quite often. I want to say even on a weekly basis, but for sure on a monthly basis. And it's open to anyone in the industry. I've been a part of a few of their conversations, and it's quite informative where there's a presentation, but also an open Q&A, and oftentimes they bring in speakers from different parts of the supply chain so that we can better understand one another's realities and actually have a more powerful impact and more coordinated impact when we understand where we're coming from. And yeah, it takes a lot of work, I'm sure, for on their end organizing this many talks, and
Yeah,
even for looking at the conference right now, right?
I know.
There's
It is extraordinary. It's incredible the work that they do. So, you know, massive shout out to Textile Exchange's extraordinary work in across all different fibers. We're focusing today on animal fibers, but you know, their work across all different fibers as well. So you know, I think putting together you know, a conference like this is hugely impactful, isn't it, in the influence that it
yeah.
has to leverage best practice. I mean, when we think about, what sort of assurances or certifications there really were around animals and the fibers that was
just a few years ago.
Just only a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, I think the Sustainable Fiber Alliance was founded in 2015, and it's not that long ago. And also, I think it is really interesting. I think that often consumers or even designers don't connect the sort of animal welfare issues with a fiber in the same way as they do taking, say, for example, an animal's skin. So that's only really been raised on everybody's consciousness also very recently. You talked about the 5 freedoms. Can you explain what's meant by the 5 freedoms regarding animal welfare?
Yeah, so it looks at making sure that the animals aren't hungry, they're not thirsty. They are treated in, I think now the terminology they used is they have an environment that allows them to have appropriate behavior. So making sure that they are protected if you have a farm that has multiple different animals, that they have proper shelter, living conditions. Yeah, and I think for me, I might have missed one or two. I don't know if it comes on top of your mind there too.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's basically about assuring that, for example, if you're observing what an animal's natural kind of instincts are, that they are not prevented, they're not penned too tightly, they're not allowed to interact properly. Obviously, they're not subjected to cruel, distressing treatment, etc. So all of the things that I think, most people, if they're purchasing a product or looking to source a material, they would want to know that the animal that had produced that was not, going to suffer in any way, and that they were fed and watered correctly. So I think, it sounds like basic common sense, but actually these practices in intensive farming are, have been proliferating. So it's about going back, allowing enough space for the animal and natural grazing, etc. So,
even if they're in a farming setting, to make sure that they are getting grazing time, and oftentimes they're in quite remote areas, and actually the climate the weather's quite harsh. So it's also making sure that they have access to not just, the grass as food, but forage, corn. They're getting their vaccinations, that they are, protecting them. They're not using pesticides, and that they're following the list of harmful substances that are banned. So it's quite comprehensive. And I encourage, if you haven't read through the RWS standard, it's a good place to start. It is quite hefty, but it highlights and gives a good framework. And it is quite detailed.
Absolutely. So we're, certainly you can open source access a lot of information from Textile Exchange, results of their reports, etc. The other one that I really wanted to draw out as well, because when we first started working with you, and also a company called Choquet, who obviously you're spinning us from, is the emergence of yak as a fiber. And we got many people very interested that they would never even have thought that yak would produce such a beautiful, luxurious fiber.
The hand feel of it.
Yeah, the hand feel is extraordinary. And so that attracted a lot of attention. And I think it's really interesting because obviously, I don't think anybody even knows what a yak looks like, most of the people. But,
massive creatures.
Yeah, huge creatures. But they also, Choquet, working with you, have produced, a sort of completely transparent supply chain that's supporting the herders, and also social innovations as well, community innovations as well, to make sure that really you're assuring best practices. Because there any interesting things you can tell us about yak farming and fiber?
Yeah, so yak is the farming is more nomadic, and so the yaks are often kind of extension of the families of the herders. So they're smaller herd sizes. And they tend to move around from area to area. The herders use yak for many things, like the milk. They use it for soap. They use the outer fur, which can be, so yak is kind of like cashmere. It only has about 100 grams of really soft down fiber, and that's like the inner coat of near the belly area. but the top layer is used for tents. And so they really, I guess in some senses, there's no waste.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very part of their livelihoods. And for yak, it does have an amazing hand feel. It has the warmth of wool. It's actually warmer. But what I think does stand out about Showcase is their community development programs. And that's what drew UPW to want to work with them and to continue our partnership. We're on our third year. So some of the community work they do is they have a women's empowerment cooperative, and that is, they have several actually. In Qinghai, it's a hand spinning cooperative. And these are used more like knitting small accessories. And they host health visits. They've done it 4 times they've been around for now 14 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
quite a while. So they're definitely one of the first before it was, I mean, not that I think people are still learning about it right now, but they entered the game very early and really did help shape the market. But yeah, I think they're doing incredible work. You know, even one of the stories that I like to draw from is one of the first time they set up, it was an entrepreneurship cooperative for herders and people within the community to learn how to segment the quality of yak fiber. And that person was part of the program the first year. The second year, he became the head of the cooperative. And the third year, he became the village head.
Wow.
And so you see how it really does impact a community on a larger scale. And they're constantly looking for brands to work with who are willing to kind of invest in impact incentives and financially as well, so that they can continue to support these communities. Even the last one, I know I'm kind of rambling now, but I think another one I want to mention is they provide scholarships for some of the students in the area.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Amazing. I mean, you know, because then it really does this thing that we like to talk about a lot at the Sustainable Angle, is how fashion can be a force for good. And so when you hear these stories and you understand those impacts right the way back through the supply chain, you see it really can be. It's just about having the intent, you know, and working with and making the right partnerships and working with the right organizations. And of course, you know, your partnership with Showcase, a shining example of that. Now, what I did want to do, because I can see time moving on a little bit, is also ask about how people can see your materials, source your materials. Obviously, they can do that through us on our virtual expo, but also you on your website, you also have the stock service, and you have an amazing service that I think brands will be super interested in. You have your ULab. Can you tell us a bit about both your access to your materials and your ULab?
Sure. Yeah, we want to make sustainable yarns accessible to everyone. So that's from students to independent designers who might be the first, second year kicking off their brand, and of course to the larger brands and corporations. So for students, we do sponsor a few scholarships every year. So we work with St. Martin's, Parsons, Royal College of Arts, and yeah, we look at portfolios and we select a few students that we can sponsor. And if you're part of a design competition, yarn is another way we can support you in your collection. For independent designers, we have no minimum order quantities, so it just starts at 1 kg of yarn, which makes anywhere between 3 to 5 sweaters.
Yeah.
And so it's important. I mean, if you're starting off, it's quite rare to be able to find such quality yarns that don't have high orders. But yeah, shifting gears a little bit to talk about ULab with brands who want to work with us. We want to be able to make the design process a lot more efficient. And I think this is something very important for us right now, especially with COVID. We need to decrease waste, and we need to become more efficient. And so UPW has, we have integrated our entire yarn collection with Apex. So if you're a designer, you're probably familiar with that program. So you can use, select our yarns and then do your designs, and it's quite realistic of what it would look like with the real sample. And therefore you only need to then order the sample yarns that, that you know your team, you've already briefed your team, you know you want to actually move forward with sampling and production. We also can do custom twists and custom lab dibs. So if you have a particular design in mind, or you want to swap out one of the colors, we can work with your team to kind of match your mood and feel. And lastly, I want to talk about our partnership with Shimaseki, and they so they have the whole garment machine. I'm not sure, Amanda, have you ever seen the whole garment machine actually?
Yeah,
Like,
I have. But
virtual knitting?
if you could describe it, that would be great.
I mean, it's quite odd to see, but if you've seen a 3D printer, yeah, it's something similar to that. And there is no waste in it. It's not knitted in several pieces. It comes out as the entire sweater. And so we have a collection of our yarns that are compatible with the machine. And I think, from using more digital tools in your design process before you even begin sampling to the finished product, you can make that very streamlined. And yeah, I mean, we would encourage wherever you are in your journey to consider to use sustainable materials. And some we want to highlight is organic cotton, the animal certified fibers, RWS, GCS. RMS is coming up next year.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, and also the innovative synthetics and recycled materials. That's a big part of our coming collection. So definitely stay tuned. That will launch in a few months. So.
Amazing. Really, really looking forward to that. And I think, this sort of you've got sustainability fused with this very creative way of, thinking about fibers, the very beautiful blends, super high quality, always, they're always in the studio, they're always the hangers that everybody just wants to gravitate towards and
That's great to
super
hear.
tactile and very, very beautiful. So Kwan, I thank you so much for joining us during this Textile Exchange Conference week. It's absolutely fascinating to learn about all these different initiatives, and also to learn how they're really gathering speed. And as you said, the mohair standards coming up pretty soon. And I know that we're also going to be welcoming you for the 1.618 conference, the luxury conference in Paris in December. So, which is not too far away, just next month. So everyone who's listening, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
really
for joining.
So much engagement. Thank you very much, both for those of you who are joining new and the ones that were on the non-starter this morning. Thank you for coming back. That was so nice. And do look out, for what we're going to be doing in the future. Stay with us on social media. That would be really amazing. Look forward to, hopefully, if you can follow us on social media when we do the Paris show, because that will be very new to us as well. We'll be doing that for the first time. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you, Kwan. And looking forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.